Amy, what were your thoughts? Because I know I thought to myself when I heard this and I watched that overtime, I thought to myself, number one, why would you possibly want to have possession of the ball to start? As a lifelong Patriots fan, knowing how often teams would set up Tom Brady to come back. So why would you possibly want to take possession of the ball first, knowing that Patrick Mahomes now has a target? And if you don't score that touchdown and you know that if you got that field goal, which they did, and that it's a chance for each team to have the ball again, to score again before sudden death, if there is, of course, a tie. But why would you do that?
Well, I'm going to answer that in a minute. But first, I'm going to say every time I hear someone went to Harvard, I think of that scene in Legally Blonde where she looks at him and says, like it's hard. I can see two reasons why you might wish to take the ball. One, if you believe your defense is winded, if you believe your defense needs just a moment to catch their breath, okay, fair enough. Or if you are doing the analysis that Kyle Shanahan said he did after the game, which is, I wanted to know no matter what, we got it the third time. So if we scored and they tied us, we got the ball again. So I'm not as het up as many are that they took the ball. I see arguments to do it and arguments not to do it. I don't know the condition of the defense at that moment, and that may have factored in.
Well, it's funny because Jim Nantz, of course, as I mentioned, will be joining us. And he did say on the broadcast, this defense, the Niners defense, looks gassed. Maybe it was a chance to let them rest up, and that could very well be. Or maybe he just felt confident in his quarterback and in his offense that he wanted to get on the board. One thing I think that I feel very confident about in having watched the Super Bowl, as I mentioned last week on What the Football was, we watched Brock Purdy go out there and manage the game very well. I would like to put an end to this game manager nonsense because I do believe that managing a quarterback, managing a system is an important part of being a quarterback. And he may not have played a perfect game, but he played a pretty damn good one.
Both teams played very, very, very good games. And someone said to me very early in my career, and I found it very wise. So if I've shared this before, I think it's important to share it again. So often after a game of magnitude, or any game really, the focus is on who lost and why they lost, as opposed to who won and why they won. We just watched a terrific game with two very good teams, two extraordinary defenses, and I think special teams played a huge part in this game. So I just find it fascinating that the tendency is to focus on why a team lost rather than why the other team won.
Okay, so what aspects of special teams?
Well, a couple things on special teams. First of all, and this is rather odd, both punters averaged 50.8 yards per punt. First of all, that's an extraordinary number. That's terrific. But that the number was the same, that was kind of karma. Number two, Butker had a 57-yard field goal. Moody had a 55 and a 53-yard field goal. So in punting distance, great. Long distance field goals, some of them were great. I think a very, very significant difference in this game was that mixed extra point. The moment San Francisco missed that extra point, I turned to my husband and said, if this game comes down to a very close score, that is a huge advantage for Kansas City because they're chasing a different number now. So special teams was great when it needed to be, and that mixed extra point loomed large. Suzy, I'll stop talking in one moment after I just say I'm always perplexed that people don't recognize how important special teams is. We focus on offense. We focus on defense. I like to focus on special teams. It can be the difference in a game, says the girl who worked for a team that had Ray Guy.
Yeah, no kidding. And also, as I thought about it during the game, and I was watching it with Brockman and a couple other friends at the house, for a while, we were talking about the kicker is going to be the MVP. And then we also thought about Jake Moody and just some of the losses that he had, some of the misses that he had for this kid who's a rookie, and the pressure that the Super Bowl is really coming down to feet for a while. I thought was pretty overwhelming.
Great point. I always focus on special teams. That missed extra point, as I noted, loomed large. But your analysis, your point that you just made is a good one. It could have come down to an MVP as a kicker.
Yeah, it's so funny because you're right. We do talk about the quarterbacks all the time. We talk about the running backs in this game in particular. But yeah, it was for a while, we had no idea what was going to happen.
You touched upon something earlier when we ran that clip about the players on the 49ers saying they didn't know the rules. That obviously shouldn't be the case, or to state the obvious, that shouldn't be the case. Everyone should know the rules. But I'm less bothered, far, far, far less bothered that players may not have known the rules, because at the end of the day, you take the field, and if your job is to block, if your job is to tackle, if your job is to cover, whether you know the rules or not, you've got to go do that. Do I think they should have known the rules? Absolutely. Do I think that was a huge difference? What I think would have been a just horrific issue is if the coaches and those who were responsible for providing input as to play calls, as to making decisions as to play calls, if they didn't know the rules, and I don't know if they did or didn't, but if the coaches and others who are giving input into decision-making didn't know the rules, that is horrific and inexcusable.
Check out new episodes of What the Football with Suzy Shuster and Amy Trask every Tuesday. Watch us on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page or follow and listen wherever you get your podcasts.